Welcome back, everybody, as we continue to look at some of the coolest dudes of the Old Testament. Today we're going to be continuing with part 2 of Abraham, initially known as Abram, and how he became the key to everything. In the last video, we talked about how Abram earned the title of the Idol Smasher by refusing to worship the idols that the society around him was. And because of this, because of his refusal to worship false gods or idols, the true God made a promise to him. If you will go, leave this house, leave the house of your father, leave this land that you live in, and go to a place that I will show you, then I will make of you a great nation. And so they left. Abram, taking his wife Sarai and his nephew Lot and all of his household, and went to the place where God told them. They traveled from the border area of what was now Syria and Turkey into what is now the land of Israel. And once there, God makes another promise. He tells Abraham that he's going to give him many children, many offspring. God tells Abram that his descendants will be so plentiful that you'd have to be able to count the dust of the earth in order to count their number. 10,012, 10,013, 10,000. Oh man. 1, 2, 3. Not long after this, after a brief rushed patch of time, God speaks to Abram again in a vision and tells him, "Fear not, for I am your shield, and your reward will be great." Now, Abram was not a young man. He was 75 years old when God asked him to leave his homeland. And now he's 85 years old. And he says to God, "My reward is going to be great? What reward? You said I'd have many children, but I'm an old man and I have none." And God says to him, "Because you believe in me and because you worship me, I have made you a promise. Go outside and count all the stars of the heavens. That's how many descendants you will have." Wary but trusting, Abram puts all of his faith in God, that he will keep his promise. I mean, he is God after all. And so God makes a formally binding legal agreement with Abram, a covenant. 14 years later, God finally speaks to Abram again. He reminds him of the promise that he's made and also tells Abram what he needs to do. He says, "Walk before me and be perfect. Live a life that is holy and love me as I have loved you, and live according to my commandments. Do this, and I will give this land that you're in to you and to all of your offspring." And then he does something interesting. God changes Abram's name. He adds, in English, just a single letter, an H, and makes his name Abraham, which literally translates into father of many. And if that's not enough, God tells Abraham that his wife, Sarai, is going to have a baby. Now, Abraham is nearly 100 years old, and Sarai is 89. And God's telling him they're going to have a baby? Yup. Sure enough, within the year, Sarai gets pregnant and gives birth. And they named their son Isaac. And Isaac we'll learn about a little bit in the next video.
Foreshadowing.
Now, there wasn't a lot of action in this week's video, I know. But what I did talk about is perhaps one of the most important things that has ever happened to humanity. You see, Abraham is not just the father of a nation, but he's also the father of 3 world religions: Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Judaism traces its lineage through the offspring of Abraham, Isaac. And Islam traces its lineage to Abraham through another of his offspring, an illegitimate son named Ishmael, whom we didn't talk about this video. And Christianity traces its lineage to Abraham by being the continuation of the Jewish faith, the fulfillment of it. And Abraham holds this important role because it was he who finally turned away from the idol worship that the world was participating in and decided to worship the one true God, believing that that's all there really was. And again, as I said before, because of this, God made him the promise that he would bless Abram and bless his descendants. And this is indeed what happened. The descendants of Abraham became the Israelites. And though they slipped up here and there, for the most part throughout history, they stayed true to the worship of the living God. And so God blessed them with the ultimate blessing, the incarnation of the Word of God as Jesus Christ. Because of his willingness to go against the way that the world was worshiping, to go against his own family even, God blessed Abraham and made him the key to everything that would come. In my last video, I talked about how Abraham, as a youth, rejected the idol worship of his father and those around him. And in this video, we saw that it wasn't until Abraham was 100 years old that God fulfilled his promise to give Abraham a child through which he would bless the world. This means that for probably 70 or 80 years, Abraham was waiting, doing all the things that God asked him to in the meantime. He left his country to move to a place he didn't know. He had to endure a famine in the new land that he moved to. His wife Sarah was abducted twice by kings. He fought a war to save his nephew Lot. This and many other things he was forced to endure, but he never stopped believing that God would fulfill his promises. Abraham is a model of endurance and patience for us, a lesson that God doesn't always work quickly in our lives, but when he does, it is always amazing.